Professor Wang is a full professor in environmental science, environmental system engineering at the Department of Environmental Science and Technology of Fudan University. His research interests include environmental system engineering and carbon neutralities, cleaner production, circular bio-based economy, ecological capital and products. Professor Wang has published over 100 research papers on the journals such as Nature Communications, Environmental Science and Technology, Conservation and Recycling, Journal of Cleaner Production, Journal of Industrial Ecology, Energy, Science of Total Environment, and Journal of Environmental Management. Professor Wang has been awarded the Outstanding Young Scholar Grant by the National Natural Science Foundation of China and the Newton Advanced Fellow by the British Academy. Professor Wang has been the chief scientist for National Key Laboratory Project for China, and he served as a co-editor of Journal of Cleaner Production, executive director of Fudan Tyndall Center, and a former president of Chinese Society of Industrial Ecology. So let's welcome Professor Wang for the fourth paper today. The title paper is Cleaner Production and Life Cycle Thinking in Pulp and Paper Industry Towards Carbon Neutrality.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction. Okay, I'm allowed to share my screen now. Opening it, just 1 second. Okay, can you guys see my screen now?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. It is my great honor to be at this conference, very important workshop, although we cannot be face-to-face, but I look forward to the opportunity in the near future. So today I'm going to address a little bit about the cleaner production and the life cycle thinking in a particular sector, pulp and paper making, towards carbon neutrality. So we have seen a lot of this kind of a phenomenon in the last 1 or 2 years, that because of the COVID, and actually we have seen that a lot of people, they get into their shopping mall and buy a lot of toilet papers, and it's empty. Actually, in the modern era, there was some prediction long time ago saying that the paper consumption would decrease. Actually, it's not. Because of the economic and industrial development, and also with the improvement of the living standards, and also the other reasons, like using paper to replace plastic, and also most significantly, in the digital era, online shopping coming, actually there are more consumptions of paper products nowadays. Here, just actually just want to show the whole cycle or the history of the paper making from a long time ago and to the modern era. Okay. So, sorry. Okay. We can also see from here that actually, as I said, after online shopping came out, there are a lot of the paper production has increased significantly. Most Chinese people know, I think everyone knows Taobao and all the others, and that really greatly promote their consumption of the paper production. This here is a distribution and scale of the paper making enterprises in China. Actually, here we want to address a little bit the paper making system, the paper, let's say paper manufacturing and construction system is really a complex system. It has the industry sector inside, but also surrounded with the social economic system. And outside of that, it's the natural ecosystem. So actually, this sector, it has its own feathers to make it really to add the complexity of this its system. First, we want to look at the raw material structure. We can see there are different raw materials, including like wood, which is more widely used in the Western countries for the paper making. And for quite a long while, actually, like China, India, they have straw pulp as their main material. However, later, because of the other things changing, the material structure also changing. This is a very typical producing process and technology using in the modern paper making in the paper industry today. Also, there are like a policy agenda. For example, that China has banned the import of solid waste, including the waste papers, since this year, the beginning of this year. So actually, those things add the complexity of this sector, and also actually their high energy consumption of this sector. Actually, according to International Energy Agency, paper making sector is the fourth largest energy consumption manufacturing sector. And also taking China as an example, they're changing all the time for the environmental regulations. So the enterprises they have to cope with those stricter environmental standards and regulations, and also not mentioning today that they have a new target so for the carbon neutrality, and then the enterprise need to adjust their either technology or management system to meet the new requirement. We can see there are a lot of trade-off actually in this sector. From the material, either you're going to use wood pulp or straw pulp. Actually, traditionally, as I said, that in China, India, there are a lot of straw has been used to make paper. However, due to the environmental regulation becoming stricter, due to the technological complexity, the wood pulp actually is more, let's say, easily to achieve the emission standards. This is not about the carbon, but about the other pollutants. However, because of the strict environmental standards, many enterprises they have to shift their source from straw to wood. However, there are other benefits actually to using straw as the main source for paper making, and there are others. So there are quite a few trade-offs into sectors, especially today if we're talking about carbon neutrality targets, also for this sector. So this is the carbon emissions for China and Europe and the United States for the paper making sectors. So actually, we can see that China, the paper sector, paper industry, this sector, because of its because of the China's energy structure, so it's about over 50% of the energy source from coal. So actually, it's the main source for its CO2 emissions. We can see actually because we call it 30-60 targets, the carbon peak and the carbon neutrality. Actually, the paper making has already been included as one of the 8 main sectors to talking about their carbon emission, low carbon emission, and for their 30 and 60 targets sector. So in order to have a better understanding of this sector, we employed the lifecycle analysis to the different pathways of their technologies to try to evaluate their from a more comprehensive perspective to learn their environmental impacts. And we also have done a benchmark study to use meta-analysis to study their paper making sector across the whole world, and to see to try to see their benchmark of this sector, especially for carbon emissions. So this paper has already been published in the Renewable Sustainable Energy Review. Here I want to address a little bit about the cleaner production development, especially for the straw pulping. So this is the very early stage of the straw pulping technology, which generates a lot of environmental issues, pollutants and CO2 emissions as well. And here later, when we employed quite a few clean production technologies, including to have the black lacquer, to have excellent recovery, and they also have the energy recovery, that actually quite a few of the materials and energy can be recycled on site. And also here we have done study that back into 6 years ago, try to study actually the methane emissions from the waste water plant treatment for the paper making sector in China, how much potential of those biological materials can be recycled for the whole sector in China. And actually from the life cycle perspective, we can compare the different companies with different technological routes. And here is a new model actually. We call it a training model because it was first developed by this company, which are relying on straw pulp. They have introduced a series of new technology routes and to making the black lacquer, changing that back to fertilizer, which actually, if you are familiar with the life cycle analysis, even though actually then it will change the scope when we are talking about the life cycle assessment analysis. And they also have the, we call it ecological integration process to have the constructed wetland as part of the wastewater treatment facilities to reduce actually the direct energy use which have been used to treat the wastewater, and as other materials being used to treat the wastewater as well, actually to achieve a better performance. We can use a biological carbon metabolism analysis and also the other eco efficiency analysis to see the difference between the clean production stage 3 to compare to the early stages. So we can see actually the training model actually has been considered being very successful by using the straw pulp, which is technologically more difficult than wood pulp to make clean paper to have with less emissions. So we have done a lot of studies about the details of how much achievement by using by the training model. Actually, it was a very successful model, even being introduced to United States to have a new production facility there. Unfortunately, due to the COVID and also the other issues, it has not been fully fulfilled or the targets in United States. So actually, considering the carbon emissions for this sector, there are several pathways actually we can consider to reduce its carbon because it's heavily relying on the coal energy here in China for this sector. I think first of all, to have the optimization for the energy structure is very important. This is very easy to understand. And also, we can have the optimized ways to study the on-site production chain to have the optimal path. I'm not going to address the details here. So by using this kind of optimization process selection for the technical paths, that we can choose the best production paths actually for the companies and to reduce their energy use and carbon emissions as well. And then we can also use the big data and the AR technology to help the companies to become to develop the digital system, digital twins, for example, and to have the artificial intelligence method to from the whole production line to reduce those unpredicted stop of their main machine and also make sure the quantity as well. So those can actually all be very helpful to help the companies to reduce their carbon emission, to reduce their energy consumptions, which is their first concern, and then also the carbon emissions as well. Also, when you talking about the carbon neutrality targets for this particular sector, we also need to address a bit about their its own carbon neutrality standards. We know there like past 2060, there are also the ISO standards, RPCC principles. However, for a particular sector, because of its own feather, there from the life cycle perspective, there are different actually factors which need to be considered for the carbon neutrality, for the carbon emission accounting. So here we designed carbon neutrality standards for this sector, and this has been we have working with a few international companies and also international organizations try to release this standard as soon as possible. It also being used in Malaysia with VIDA Group to study their carbon emissions and to achieve for their carbon target management and governance. Also, we have built the global paper, we call it global paper industry lifecycle carbon accounting database. This will be very useful, especially for the companies which have their carbon neutrality targets, because many companies today, they have the supply chain all across the world. So then we need to have the data from the different countries. So this is some work we have recently just finished, which is built upon the material flow analysis, built upon the different technical pathways of the paper making in different nations, and then energy consumption, the carbon emissions for the whole life cycle. So this is the whole system of this work, and this is about the emissions. The carbon emissions has been considered in this data set, and this is the structure of the paper the carbon accounting database. So this is a long-term database which we developed from 2016 until very recently 2019. Also that we can have different view for the country in a certain year, but we can also see the accumulated carbon emissions for different countries where we consider the whole life cycle. It will tell us different messages actually. So due to the time reason, I'm not going to address too much of here. Actually, we also make the scenario prediction according to the carbon targets for different countries. Actually, it is different, especially here, like for the countries with a better endowment of the forest resource, recycling as much of waste paper as possible is better for paper life cycle carbon neutrality. But for the countries use less domestically produced virgin wood, it's a different story. So there are more things to do towards the carbon neutrality for this particular sector. And thank you very much.